Hello, everybody. Welcome to Election Review. I'm your host, Kelvin Graves, and today I have a special guest with me. She is a representative of the 51st House District. She's running for re-election. She is on the Committee of Health and Free Tennessee and a part of the Southern Connected Communities Project. She took the seat of the late Representative Bill Beck. She has held over 100 meetings with community groups, stakeholders, and constituents to learn the issues that are important. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Afton Behn.
Hello.
Thank you so much for accepting my request for this interview.
Of course, I was very impressed with you because a term that I hold near and dear to my heart is always be organizing. And you found me at an event and came up to me and said, I requested to interview you a few months ago, and now I guess it was March or April. And so I'm asking you again. And I thought, wonderful. I love it. I love that you're relentless.
Well, that is who I am. That's yes. So my first question is, why did you decide to run after the passing of Bill Beck?
So during April of last year, when the Tennessee Three were expelled, or two of them were expelled, a few of us who are considered professional organizers in the state of Tennessee and in Nashville were called in to help organize, to support the organizing of teachers and students and organizing the events outside the Capitol. And the day of the expulsions, I was outside for almost 16 hours, drenched, and decided that the caucus, I wanted to be a progressive voice in the caucus to support other progressive voices. And so I decided to run. And unfortunately, Representative Bill Beck passed away a few weeks later, and I jumped in the race.
So, with that being said, since you since you're running for re-election, what pieces of legislation do you hope to introduce next term?
Well, I'm already thinking about the legislative campaigns that I want to run. As you and your listeners may know, I ran on ending the grocery tax this year. And of course, I will be bringing that back next year. I also was the House sponsor on the bill to undo one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country. And so I also bring that one back as well. But in terms of new legislation, I'm really thinking about state preemption, which is when the state of Tennessee preempts legislation that Nashville and other cities pass, often sometimes by a popular ballot in the example of our community oversight board. So I'm interested in perhaps running a campaign to raise awareness about bad contractors in the state of Tennessee, which is something that's affecting a lot of folks, especially in Davidson County. And also thinking about other legislation in terms of putting forth a kids' bill of rights, perhaps. This session, we saw a lot of legislation that protected and codified parents' rights, and I'd like to push back on that by offering a contrast.
So, you spoke about um kind of brought me into my next question. So, you mentioned something about Nashville, Davidson County. We've seen a we've seen over this last session, we saw how the relationship between Metro Nashville and the state of Tennessee was torn apart. What steps will you be willing to take to strengthen that relationship?
So I think it's a question of what is my role in this moment and what are other legislators' roles. I think there is a role for members of the caucus to strengthen that relationship in terms of their either friendships or their political capital in the relationship between Nashville and the state. My role, I believe, is one more of an antagonist and one that seeks to organize the already mobilized constituency we have in Davidson County that is very upset with how the state overreaches its power on a daily basis in terms of our daily living in Nashville. And so In my role, I would like to raise awareness about what this overreach looks like and how Nashvillians can stand together in taking action against the state.
All right. So, how confident are you that the next term will be more effective in law making and passing than the previous term?
Well, we are in the Democratic super minority, and so oftentimes it's very difficult. It's challenging to pass bills. However, I did pass a bill as a freshman member of the super minority party this session, which I was very proud of myself for. But in terms of when you're a super minority and you're really pushing back against this absolute power structure, your goal is to radically reimagine and redefine what is possible in this state. And so I did that with the grocery tax bill by closing corporate tax loopholes. I wanted to raise awareness about who really who suffers who is on the receiving end of the tax burden in the state, and what we can do about it. And so I think that perhaps next year we'll have a few more, hopefully, Democrats elected. And therefore, we may be able to pass more bills, but overall, we're still working to break the supermajority. And in that tenure and in that era, we are driving a narrative as to what is possible and how the Republicans are not fulfilling what we believe is a Tennessee for all.
So, speaking of the grocery tax bill, how would I don't know if you mentioned it before, but how would that exactly work? Is it if I'm going to the store and something is $3, I'm only paying $3?
Yes. So in Tennessee, we have a state portion of the grocery tax and a local portion, which can be up to 9% in totality. So what our bill did was try to take the money that we would receive from closing corporate tax loopholes. Almost 60% of Tennessee companies don't pay an excise tax, as denoted by the Department of Revenue in 2021. And so we would close those loopholes and then pay to end the grocery tax, which is about $700 million per year.
Okay. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but is one of those companies Lee Company?
Probably. I mean, I something that I've been the grift keeps on grifting at the Tennessee legislature. I have seen a lot of nepotism, cronyism, and those closest to power are getting the best deals. And that shouldn't be what state government's about. It should be about being good fiscal stewards of Tennessee tax dollars.
All right. So I want to talk about a different bill that you introduced, which I want to ask you if you can um I guess dumb it down so I can understand because it's a lot. So it's House Bill 2536, which for the people says, as introduced, directs the department to establish by January 1st, 2025, a publicly accessible website that contains information about the performance of child care agencies, including violations by the agency, injuries or deaths occurring at the agency, date of the agency's last inspection, and other relative information. So, can you explain what that is saying?
Yeah. So right now in Tennessee, there are different agencies that we have in state government. And some of those agencies don't have the appropriate platforms nor the software to ensure that there is transparency as to, for example, how money is being spent, or in terms of accountability for facilities such as daycare facilities and or DCS facilities. So some of the legislation we saw this year was to digitize and ensure that Tennesseans, as well as including legislators, have access to information that is not easily accessible.
So, I heard that Department of Human Services also has something similar to this. So, is just so if DHS has something similar, what is the benefit of DCS also having this?
Because they're two different agencies. And
Okay.
so I imagine that in the within the programs of each of the agencies that there is a spectrum of accountability and transparency for each of those programs. And this bill in particular would have forced DCS to ensure that information about those facilities that are receiving state tax dollars and also handling our most vulnerable constituency, which are children, that the information would have been more easily accessible.
Okay. So I have the reason why I asked you, I have family that works for DCS, and they were wanting your opinion, not your opinion, but wanting me to ask you what it actually meant because it was a little confusing for me to read. So I want to switch gears and talk about something that was challenged last term, which is education. So what does the education of youth mean to you?
What does the education of youth?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in Tennessee, fortunately for Nashville, the metro county schools in Nashville are some of the best in the country and have really been a shining light across the state. Unfortunately, there are many metrics that Tennessee often lags behind, coming in the bottom 10 in terms of money spent per pupil, in terms of teacher pay. And so for me, I think what it means for young people is that we have a responsive and comprehensive education system that ensures that they are able to critically think, that they're able to achieve what they want to, but also that the money is being reinvested in our young people, so that you can stay here and live here, and make Tennessee a better place for all of us.
So I asked somebody else this question and I want to get your opinion. Now, a I don't know if this is a reality, if this can be done, but do you think school districts should have a say in what goes on, or do you think school districts should have a say on the bills that the General Assembly passes about their schools?
I believe so. And I think that this is similar to your question about the control of the state versus Nashville. I believe in local control always, for the most part. And I think that the people who are most impacted and the folks that are at the core of these issues are the ones that should be making the decisions. And so I do feel that in terms of our education legislation, that our local school boards, our local teachers, and our local young people are the ones that should be making decisions about how this state tackles education in the future.
So, if this is an open-ended question, maybe if people have these views, why do you think nobody takes action on them?
Can you say more? Can you elaborate?
So I've asked different people I asked somebody else who I interviewed this exact same question. And she also said, yes, she thinks that it should happen. But there's no, I guess it's this how my mind operates. There was no, tell me more. How do you think this should go about? What can we do? So, and many other instances, people may have certain opinions or certain views and not act on them. So why do you think that is? Or can you tell me your opinion on that?
So, in terms of why the legislature doesn't respond to, I guess, young people and those that are asking for different actions at the state, I think that they don't have an education background, and some of them do, right? But a lot of them don't. They're small business owners. They are contractors. They're housing developers, and they really don't have a background in education. And I don't think that they maybe put the same value that I put on that the teachers and school board in terms of their expertise and their specialties. Now, in terms of is it how folks can take action?
Yes.
Your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So I felt like the anti-voucher campaign this session, which was successful in ensuring that vouchers were not passed, and we did that with a limited amount of resources. I did see, I observed a lot of local organizing from school boards to county commissions to students and teachers showing up locally and demanding that their counties pass resolutions that were then brought to the House and Senate members of the legislature. So I think that your voice did matter this session. We were able to stop vouchers. And I think it's an excellent case study moving forward of how to organize locally and get state wins.
So, speaking about the vouchers, there was, from what I was reading, there was a split between Senate Republicans and House Republicans on what the bill should exactly say. So, and that's why I think the bill failed. So, looking at this upcoming term, how what steps do you think the House and Senate Democrats and community members are? How do you think? What steps are they going to take? What steps are they going to take to make sure the bill or the plan fails again?
So I think there's a lot to learn from this session and our success, and also some of our intermittent failures in terms of the session. But I will say that I think an excellent indicator as to how this has impacted rural communities is that most of the rural Republicans who came out in support of public schools and were anti-voucher did not cede primary challengers. And so, unlike Texas, for example, Texas, all of those rural Republicans that stood up for public education were unfortunately primaried. And in Tennessee, no one stood up to primary these rural Republicans. So I think they're stronger heading into this next session. And I think as a Democratic caucus on our end, we are working to flip competitive state House seats so that we can elect more pro-public education Democrats and lessen their numbers for next year.
All right. So I want to switch gears again and talk about something that I can tell you are very passionate about, which is the economy and taxes. So you, like you mentioned before, introduced the bill to end grocery tax. I think there was another tax bill that I saw that you introduced, but I can't remember what it specifically said. So, what are your views on the current tax system and how? What are your views on the current tax system?
That's an excellent question. So in Tennessee, we have one of the most regressive economic tax systems in the country. Why is that? In Tennessee, we rely heavily on sales taxes, so compounded sales taxes, lots of sales taxes, which when you look at the lowest income earners in the state of Tennessee are paying more in their share of taxes than the wealthy and the biggest corporations in this state. And so a large part of my legislative portfolio this year was to ensure that folks understood that the tax burden falls disproportionately on working mothers trying to buy baby formula at Kroger, and not the biggest companies in the state like Amazon and FedEx, who've received hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidies and are not paying what they owe in taxes. So unfortunately, our corporate tax base has been so eroded that the financial condition of Tennessee is probably looking pretty dire in the next decade, despite what my Republican colleagues might say. And so I want to make sure that Tennesseans across the state know that we can end the grocery tax. If there's a will, there's a way. And the reason we're going to do that is because it's totally unfair to charge a tax on food, which is something that everyone needs.
So, with that being said, how are you going to ensure that your tax bills pass this next term? Because I saw on Instagram last term a lot about the tax bills. Almost every post I saw was about the tax bill. So how are you going to, including that, how are you going to ensure the bill passes out of committee, I should say?
Yeah, so once again, we're in the super minority. So bills that hold corporations accountable will never pass committee because the Republican Party doesn't believe in corporate accountability. And that was evident in their passage of the largest corporate giveaway in American, probably in Tennessee, in American history, an unprecedented $1 billion giveaway that really didn't have to happen. So I think that once again, our goal is to raise awareness about how how taxes shape our communities, how taxes affect working Tennessee families, and to point in the other direction and highlight the contrast of my Republican colleagues, which believe in corporate tax cuts and benefits for the rich.
Well, let's hope that grocery tax bill passes because I sure don't like grocery taxes. It's yeah, no. Um, so what is your long-term vision for the state of Tennessee?
Oh, I love that question. So I think one, it's a more progressive tax system, which is going to take a long time, and we're going to go through some really rocky times and challenging times in the next decade in order for us to get there. But I promise and I make a commitment to you and my constituents in the state that I want to be in this seat in order to see the elimination of the grocery tax, but to also ensure that we're pulling back a really regressive tax system and to make it more just. Second, I believe that in terms of demographics, we have an aging boomer generation that is going to need a lot of care. And unfortunately, the care economy in the state of Tennessee is not heavily subsidized. And unfortunately, it's being privatized. And so what we're going to see is a massive influx of our seniors not being able to access care, really, once again, dire situation in terms of not being able to access housing, not being able to access transportation. And I look to the system that I want to build, which is one where we invest in caregivers, where we invest in social workers, where we're investing in those folks that take care of our most vulnerable. And so that'll be a large part of my vision for this state. And then finally, I do believe that state preemption is one of the biggest issues facing Tennessee. And I want to see a state that it believes in local control. And I think that we have moved so far beyond that paradigm. And so I really look forward to the day where the Tennessee state government is not overriding local control left and right, and where we're leading our cities to invest in their communities in the way they want to.
So is that local control something that you plan on trying to tackle this next term?
So the state preemption is so expansive that for me next year, I'm going to bite off a little bit and see how it tastes. And then perhaps come back in subsequent years to figure out where there are opportunities for collaboration, especially with our urban and rural counties who are facing the same set of issues and paternalism from our state government.
All right. Um, what do you say to young people who are trying to decide who they should vote for in your district?
Well, I would acknowledge that politics has felt very dismissive and very dismissive towards young people. I think that young people who have been victims of active shooter drills and have seen climate change and feel just this impending doom as to what are our politicians and elected officials doing about this issue. So I want to acknowledge that I would hope that instead of turning towards nihilism and disengagement, that you decide to get engaged and you decide to run for office and you decide to organize your communities because, I ran for this seat knowing that this is a means to an end, that this is a role that I occupy now, but my goal is to train the next generation for you all to take over and for you all to have a mentor that wants you to succeed. And so for me as a legislator, as someone who's running for office again, I would tell young folks in my district that I want to invest in you. I am investing in you. And I care deeply about what you think and what you want our world in this state to look like. And I hope that you feel valued, and you take that forward and decide to get involved.
Well, with that being said, is there anything else you want the people or your constituents to know?
Just that I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. I think that anyone who wants to run for office should, especially organizers. I think it makes me a really powerful legislator in terms of how I handle the political terrain within the legislature, so that I can be successful and that I can do the type of organizing that I want to do, to end the grocery tax and to reverse one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country. So um, it's going to it's going to be a long slog, but there are people like me who deeply believe in the project we're building, and I hope you'll join us.
Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for accepting my interview request. Can you let everybody know where they can follow you or keep up with what you're doing?
Of course. So on Twitter, I'm at Afton Bain, my first and last name, and then on Instagram and Facebook, I'm at Afton 4TN.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Bain, for accepting this, talking to me. I hope everybody now knows who they can vote for or have an idea. And I do encourage everybody to reach out. If they have further questions that I did not ask, please reach out. Like she said, Afton Bain 4TN on Instagram and Facebook, right?
Mhm.
Well, thank you all so much for watching Election Review. I'm your host, Kelvin Graves, and we'll see you in the next video.